Yo, what up? This is Mike Brown, and this is The Art of Letting Go. Today, I have a special guest in the building. I think the last time I saw you was when you were in LA.
Right,
Yeah,
correct. that,
yeah,
that small outing, that very
yeah. And James was in there cutting up on the dance floor.
exactly. That's the first thing I thought of. Man, bro, that night that night will forever be ingrained in my memory from that
Yeah.
one outing. That whole experience was epic, and I'll never forget that show. Shout out to James, bro.
Yeah, man. Shout out to James. Shoot, man, you mind introducing yourself to the people?
Oh no, absolutely. So it is Byron Jasper, Dr. Jasper, a number of other random names my patients call me. Mike knows me as Byron. We go back like four flats on a Cadillac, but I'm actually a primary care physician in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, born and raised in Southern Louisiana, Houma, Louisiana to be exact. Went to Xavier with Mike,
Mhm.
and the list goes on and on, but that's the short version.
Man, that's a trip.
Yeah.
Um, and it's dope because yeah, we went to school together, but now seeing you with your own practice, and congratulations on that, by the way. But
Yeah.
just like your journey, I'm very curious about all the in betweens of
Oh yeah.
like from finishing school to now being here. Like,
Yeah.
was starting your own practice? And can you give us a little more information on that? Because I'm not
Okay.
very familiar with the direct.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the journey has been long and winding. If you ask anybody who's a physician if the journey was ever short, it's definitely the exact opposite of short. So if you ever hear somebody say, "Oh, I went to med school and it wasn't that long of a process," they lying. Okay. Unless unless they went to night school or something like that, because it's ridiculous how long it takes to become a full-fledged doc who does whatever you want to do, because most of the time you're in training and all that. So did the 4 years of undergrad, did med school right after that, an extra year on top of that to get a master's, then did residency for 3 years, left from residency for 2 years and went to DC. And in DC I did two fellowships, which is that specialty training, came back to Baton Rouge and started working as a primary care doc. And among all of that stuff, I also started my own nonprofit, which is focused on getting more minorities into the medical field. So that's Comprehensive Medical Mentoring Program. We go by CMMP, and been working on that and doing the primary care side, but always in my mind said I wanted to open my own practice. Ever since I was actually an undergrad, I wanted to open my own practice. I just never
Wow.
knew when, what, where, or how, but I knew I was going to do it. And as I started doing a lot of my own primary care work under someone else's shingle, if you will, I said I want to eventually break out on my own, but I'm waiting, waiting for the right time. And I'm sure we can talk about this, but it's always I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna
Yeah.
do it. It's gonna happen. I just gotta wait a little bit longer and longer and longer. And as I kept saying and doing that, it just kept being one of those, what's taking so long? So when I got to the mindset that I'm gonna do it, it actually happened last year in November of 2019. I went to a conference in Orlando, and the conference was based on direct primary care. I had been studying the model for about 2 years, and I got to the conference and met a bunch of dope people, a lot of people of color who actually do this across the country well before I actually started. And they were like, "Bruh, you just got to do it. There's nothing that's going to
Yeah.
be perfect. You just got to jump in." And as the new year turned, I was like, "Oh, you know what? I'm gonna do it." I actually filed paperwork in the state of Louisiana and with the federal government in January, and my plan was to open by May. But something called the coronavirus came and threw a wrench in that. So, of course, I'm sitting on this idea of how I'm going to open, and everything keeps happening that tells me you don't need to open, right? You got people who are getting sick and clinics that are closing and small businesses that are shutting down, and the cost of everything is going up because people aren't working. And I'm just sitting here like, I need to wait. I need to wait. I need to wait. And then lo and behold, I just said, you know what? If I keep waiting, it's never going to happen. So I just kind of went on ahead and said, I'm going to do everything I need to do to actually start. And there's still a bunch of stuff that's not in place. A lot of people won't know that. And this is actually exclusive for you. I'm still not completely everything worked out, everything's perfect, all the stuff is in place where it needs to be. It is still a work in progress, but it's something that has to be done, because if you wait for it to be perfect, it's never going to happen. So jumping into launching your own business, clothing line, uh, open your own restaurant, whatever it may be, it's never going to be perfect. You just have to know where your limit is. At this point, I'm able to do it. And all the stuff that would go wrong, that's okay. I'm still going to keep moving forward because I'm still doing that every day, but I'm getting better by the day. And the last thing I'll say on this segment, because I think everybody needs to hear this, you rather, or let me rephrase, I would rather pour more blood, sweat, and tears into my own business than anybody else's. So if
Whew.
I'm going to do that, I'm going to literally stay up late. I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to grind. I'm going to do that for me because I'd rather bet on me than anybody else. So that's the part of the thing that woke me up, because as much as I was spending time doing work for everybody else, I'm like, if I did this for my own self, I actually don't think I can fail. And even if I do, I'd rather fail trying than to say shoulda, coulda, woulda. So that's how I operate every day. I'm waking up like, look, I got a ton of stuff to do, but I'm doing it for me. And that's the bottom line. And I think everything else will work itself out.
Man, man, and it's funny because you said so much. Like
Mm-hmm.
you really was speaking to me, because like my journey has been the same thing. Like just kind of just jumping into shit
Uh-huh.
and just not even knowing. Like, I talked to somebody last night about t-shirts, and they was asking me like the quality of the shirt and all that. It's like, I gotta start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait till I find that quality shirt, because I might be 20 years down the line and still haven't figured it out. So man, like I appreciate you sharing that, and is dope to see you on your journey, and even just pulling the curtain back. Like, yeah, I'm still figuring this out and I'm still doing it.
Yeah. I still don't have, and other things to kind of give people a sense of what I mean by it's not all worked out. So I've gotten a lot of people who say, where's the clinic located? I don't actually have a brick and mortar location right now. I'm actually operating doing telemedicine visits and doing what we call old school medicine. I'm doing house calls. So I'm actually going to
Wow.
people's homes to give them medical care because I don't have a physical location because of a bunch of stuff falling through. I was going to lease this property and it fell through. I was going to lease this property and it fell through. I was going to purchase this property and it fell through. And it's one of those, every time something falls through, if you keep using that as a way to say, I got to wait, you're never going to get started. So that's part of the reason why I was like, look, if this last property don't work, I'm just going to do it without a property. So I just went
Man.
on ahead and jumped in and said, you know what? On September 15th, I'm launching. I told the people who knew I was working on it, I said, the 15th is the day. I said, I don't care what happens. The 15th is the day. And at that point in my head, that was the day I had to get all my stuff ready by the 15th. So still to this day, October 1st, when we're recording this, I still don't have certain stuff in place, but it's not going to stop the process. And that just means that when I do get the stuff in place, I've already did a bunch of the other hard work getting that stuff done. So it's not everything done at once. So some people might actually look at it and say, well, it's maybe a blessing to do stuff piece by piece as opposed to having the perfect picture. And I think that's a huge thing a lot of people don't understand. And altogether, if you're doing it in that way, as much as it can, as much as it's going to have things that go wrong, that's going to happen anyway, right? And you can probably testify to this to say, you know what? As many things as I've tried, something's going to go wrong. It's just life. So you
Yeah,
just have to be
absolutely.
ready to handle that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Is there any fear in like doing the house calls during COVID?
A lot, but I also think about it in the sense that if you are good at what you do, number one, you're going to find a way to work around things that could potentially go wrong, right? So if you're, and I'm making this up, if you're a person who's a chef, you may not have all the utensils you need, but you're probably going to find a way to make a good dish. So for me, what I'm trying to do is say, look, I'm going to do house calls, but I ain't coming to everybody's house. Okay, let's get that straight. You got to
Yeah.
make sure that we on the same page, that if I'm coming to your house, you're not thinking I'm about to come into a place where it's full of crime. It's not well lit. I'm not coming at nighttime and trying to do like, I got sense now, right? So people hear, oh, you doing house calls. You coming at, no, no, no. There's certain things that need to be made aware. You need to be made aware of, and we need to work out before I show up to your door. And if I don't feel comfortable, I'm not coming. And that's the way it is. And I think people don't realize that that's the way medicine used to be. Doctors didn't always have doctors' offices, right? It didn't used to always be a waiting room full of people. It would actually be your doctor coming to you when you were extremely sick. So I'm going to make it a point to try to make it where patients and I are on the same page. We have those home visits when it's needed, not just because you're bored and you don't feel like getting out your house. And at that point, we'll work out something that's going to make it to where I'm safe, you're safe, and we both are healthy and doing well. It's not just, hey, let's show up to the person who obviously need to be in the hospital. No, we're not doing that either. Like I said, I got sense, right?
Right.
I
Yeah.
went to school and got enough loans to know when something don't make sense.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So altogether, I'll say the other thing about direct primary care, and I'm sure we can go into more detail, is that a lot of people have the misnomer that direct primary care is something similar to what we call concierge medicine. So concierge medicine is the idea that you have a patient who comes to your office or you do care for them, you bill their insurance, and you charge them a fee on top of that. So every time you might come to my office, I'm still going to charge your insurance, but you're going to pay an extra fee for me to give you extra services.
Okay.
Direct primary care is the exact opposite in that we do have a monthly membership fee, but we don't touch your insurance at all. We want you to have your insurance in case something happens. So basically, you're going to pay a lot less in a direct primary care model than you would in concierge. And we also target the actual people who need care most, because concierge medicine is usually for people who have a lot of extra income.
Right.
Direct primary care is usually for people who don't. So a lot of people hear me doing direct primary care and they think, oh, well, he's taking care of all these fancy people. And it makes me laugh because I'm like, the people I have been taking care of since I've been a resident have been the Medicaid, underserved, uninsured population who barely got two nickels to rub together. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to abandon those people now just because I'm doing my own thing. I'm actually trying to find a way to take care of people who have a little bit more so I can find a way to take care of those who don't have anything and
Man.
offset those costs. So my roots are still there, but people are afraid because it's new. Everybody thinks insurance is the way to go. And what do you mean I don't need insurance and all that? So I'm speaking a whole different language and all of a sudden people are freaked out. But their early adopters are the ones that are going to be the people who benefit most. If I told you, Mike, right now, I could take you back in time and we could buy a share of Google for $100. Would you tell me, nah, you know what, I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna just keep waiting. You're gonna be like, let's get in this time machine.
Yeah.
So the early adopters are the people who look and say, this is different. Let me learn about it. I may not jump on right away, but I want to learn about it. The ones that are like, oh, congratulations, but we'll talk 10 years from now, they're going to be the ones that are like, man, I should have did that a long time ago. So I always encourage people to learn. You don't have to jump in, but do your research because you might surprise yourself.
Right. So
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like this is gonna be like the new way of like, I guess, healthcare?
Mm-hmm. I will say it's going to be an alternative for a lot
Okay.
of people who really and truthfully understand how it works.
Yeah.
Just like, and again, let's think about it in the traditional sense in more practical terms. You got your gasoline cars, you got your electric vehicles. Who do you think drive the electric vehicles other than the people who got money? The people who understand that that vehicle is different, but it still does the same thing. It gets you from point A to point B. The way it works is just different. It's the same exact idea. Medicine is going to be different models that work in different ways. You just have to find the one that works best for you. So I think this can work a lot better for people of color, people who have less resources, and people who are often disenfranchised by the medical system. And you'll say, what do you mean by that? When you go and bring your ass to the clinic and you sit there for 45 minutes and you complain about how long you waited, then you're waiting in the room for 30 minutes, then the doc shows up, stays in for 10, and you out, and all of a sudden you like, I was here for 2 hours, I saw them for 10 minutes, and then I get a bill. You complain about that on that day, but then whenever I come and say, you don't have to do that anymore, I got a better way for you, you're like, this insurance though sounds like it's really what I need. I'm like, man, look, y'all full of shit until that moment when you complaining and you sick, and there's a bunch of other scenarios, right? Another scenario,
Yeah.
you're sick as a dog. You literally feel like utter shit. You need to see your doctor. You pick up the phone and call them, and how early can you get in? A week, 2 weeks, maybe three, depends on how busy the doctor is, if they're in the clinic that week. And at that moment, you're like, man, I need to go to urgent care. Urgent care is another fee. Or I need to go to the emergency room, another fee. Or I need to wait forever because I can't get in. Why are you complaining about all that when there is another way to do it? The issue is people don't think about that until they need to. They
Yeah.
wait till they're sick, and that's when all of a sudden it's like, man, I should have did this other model. So I'm trying to get people to enroll before that happens, for one, so we never have that problem. But two, you see there are other ways to do this. So if you start to come out of the all I know is insurance, all I know is how to use this insurance-based model, so that's what I'm gonna do. If you learn that these things exist, you may not choose to do it, but at least you know it exists, to where if you want to make that move, you have more of a, all right, I learned about it, I think I'm ready.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to do the research. They want people to come to them, put it in a nice package, and then force feed it to them to make them do it. So I honestly will tell anybody, you included, even if you're not in the state with me, I'll have this conversation with you, because this model works so well for a lot of people. It ain't perfect for everybody, but a
Yeah.
lot of people could benefit from it. And it's actually really, really, really popular in a lot of places like California, like Washington State, like Kansas, Texas, all these other places. It's just certain states that haven't adopted it yet, but there are a lot of people who are actually doing it across the country.
Why did you do it in Baton Rouge as opposed to going somewhere else?
Yeah, for me, like I said, I'm from Southern Louisiana, so I for me it's home, right?
Yeah.
And I've had that conversation before. I went to DC, and of course everybody's like, "Why wouldn't you live in DC? DC was dope." I love DC. DC had great entertainment. There was always something to do. A lot more progress had been made in DC than I had ever seen in Louisiana. But why did I come back? Because I always have felt that if you see there's a problem, but instead you walk away, you're a part of the problem. So
Yeah.
why not actually try to get your hands dirty and fix the problem that you constantly complain about? So if I complain about how bad the care is in Louisiana, and I have the opportunity to fix the care, but I instead go to DC and stay there where things are quote unquote better, how am I actually fixing anything? So I actually said, you know what? I could go to a different place where it's probably easier to get off the ground. And I knew it was going to be hard as hell to do this in Baton Rouge. But I said, I'd rather try and make it somewhere, make it happen somewhere where I know it's not going to be easy, but it's needed, it's necessary. And people understand that a lot better when you hear that story, as opposed to, well, I read your website, it looks real nice. Or my favorite, man, I saw it on Instagram. Congratulations. And I've literally sent messages to tons of people. I'm like, hey, you saw me on Instagram. You're constantly talking about how you don't have any good care. Why don't you come and talk to me so we can talk about your care? Oh, I'll consider it. Wait. So you're telling me that you rather stick with where you're at, and when I'm here in front of you telling you I got better care, I got better stuff for you, you don't want to do it. And that's why I said it's just one of those, you got to make it a thing in your mind to get these things done. And when you get them done, I think more people are going to appreciate it.
Absolutely. And like people, it's hard for people to believe in something when they don't believe in themselves.
Well, yeah,
So like, to tell somebody like this is my dream is hard for them to adapt to when they didn't dream it. So
exactly.
that's dope.
But let me ask you this. Let me ask you
Yes.
this. And I'm asking you because you're in the artistic side of things.
Yeah.
I know your stuff is way more difficult than mine. So if you, somebody who's making beats, putting music out, and doing a good job on all of your stuff and putting your blood, sweat, and tears into it, how many people are going to jump up and say, you know what? I know this cat who's doing music and I went to school with him. Let me hit him up before they say, so and so dropped a CD. Let me go ahead and spend my last $20 for that. I'm like, come on, you telling me the people that you done grew up with are gonna run to the store and talk to this stranger and grab their music before yours? Like, it make no sense.
It doesn't, but I can definitely relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's like you just got to keep going, man,
Yeah.
because like you don't have no control over that. And it's okay. And it's one of them things, because I ain't gonna lie, it used to get me mad and it used to like hurt my feelings.
Oh yeah.
It's like it don't matter, because a lot of times people don't, like I said, people don't be chasing their own dreams.
Yeah.
And once you start moving with that purpose, like I said, like just from what you're doing, I could already tell
Yeah.
what you're doing. But man, moving in that purpose, it start drawing the people to you that supposed to be with you. And then
There
it,
you go.
like you almost forget about those people that, and not forget about them, but you just don't even think about, damn, like like you ain't support my, or
Right.
whatever, and that's, Yeah, man, but it takes some work to get there too. It definitely takes some work because the grind, the solo grind is not easy at
Yeah.
all.
It's the purpose. That's the thing I think
Yeah,
me and you are agreeing on. If you have the right purpose for what you're doing, you could care less who's with you.
yeah,
Because when you're doing it for you, the people who are supposed to be with you are going to come. The people who you
yeah,
think should be with you may show up, they may not. They're going to call you when it's convenient. They're going to show up when they need something versus the people who say, you know what? I see what you're doing. I see your grind. I see your passion. How can I help? How can I be down? That's the people that really and truthfully see that you're doing it for your own purpose. So I
yeah,
agree with you. When you got that purpose, it doesn't matter. And that's why I said it makes me laugh when I hit people up and I say to them, and I'm sure people might hear this and they might actually get in their feelings, and that's cool. Hopefully they'll feel some kind of way for about 10 minutes and then they'll feel better later. But either way, my answer has always been when you literally know what you're doing and how you're doing it, you could care less who you piss off because you know you're good at what you're doing and you're doing it for the right reason. So I ruffle feathers all the time. And
yeah.
that's part of the reason, as we said before we started recording, what I said, I know my temperament wasn't going to be really good for me to work for people for too long. I was like, I got to work with myself because stuff pisses me off so regularly. I'm just like, why does this keep happening? And then I realized I was like, because you're not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be on your own journey. You're supposed to be in your own drive. So that's why it's irritating you. You can't fix the system, so make your own damn system. And that's what I'm going to do.
And that's to accept that and then
Mhm.
follow it.
Oh, yeah.
Like that takes a lot of courage.
Mhm.
So man, like I definitely commend you for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what's keeping you motivated right now?
I mean, it's weird, right? And people will talk to me, and it depends on the person, right? If a person knows me well, I'm, I would say, irritated by a lot of stuff to me that doesn't need to happen the way it happens, right? Like, and it's crazy in the medical field, the amount of racism and
Wow.
mistreatment of people. You know, before George Floyd was a common household name, before Breonna Taylor, before Ahmaud Arbery, before Freddie Gray, all of these people who had to obviously lose their life to get some type of attention to this movement. Before all that, there was so much stuff going on in the medical field. And the easiest one that I constantly point out is the Tuskegee experiment. If you
Definitely.
don't know about the Tuskegee experiment, you need to go ahead and hit pause and pull up your Google and read and then come back to us. But the Tuskegee experiment is one of the most atrocious things I have ever heard in life. 40 years of experimenting on Black people.
That's why
And
I'm scared
nobody
of
thought it was a thing until potentially somebody had to come 40 years later and say, you know what, this probably isn't right. Like, what the
yeah.
hell, right? And I was
So
just sitting there saying that at this point, that's the stuff that motivates me. Just to, you
yeah.
know, answer your question. I'm sure we'll circle back to it, but that kind of thing is what drives me because our people don't deserve that. They deserve people to say, you know what? I know we can do better for ourselves. So let me find somebody who can do that. And I want to be that person.
Man, like hearing you mention that makes me think about this COVID vaccine.
Hmm.
And I'm curious to know how like just what you feel because I know they said it's not a whole lot of black people that's signing up for it, but like what do you think? Like should we,
Yeah.
should we not? I mean, I don't plan on doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough as a medical professional. The part of me that's medical is like, we need to do it, but then the part of me that's Black is like, yeah, we probably want to wait a little bit. So it's
Yeah.
always that duality that I have to tiptoe, right? Like trying to educate Black people on why vaccines are important, but also knowing how the medical system has treated us and basically used us and spit us out and left us out to basically die. It's one of those like, yeah, I kind of understand why you don't want to actually mess with this, right? So I have to figure out that way to kind of say, where's that line of this is where I would say you can get to and it's safe. But then beyond this, I think you have to kind of say, let's kind of wait a little bit. So as far as the vaccine goes, I understand why they want more minority people to
Yeah.
enroll.
Yeah, no,
You need
I
more of
understand as well. Yeah.
yeah, you need more of a general makeup of the population to see if it works right in this population, this demographic, this age group, and all that. But I also understand people reluctant to do it because they don't want to have a bad outcome. So I
Yeah.
think it's one of those, if I had to give a statement, it would be if you feel that you're of sound health, age, whatever you want to call it, and you actually want to see if this is going to help people that are going to look like you, be in your neighborhood and all that, then I'd say I would recommend it. But if you got medical issues, you got a lot of things that are not controlled, you don't take care of yourself, I'd probably say, nah, you may want to wait a little bit because you don't want to set yourself up for a negative outcome based on you not really doing a good job of taking care of yourself prior to getting the vaccine. But if you're a healthy person, you eat right, you follow up with a doctor, you do a really good job. Usually, again, I use the word usually, vaccines are actually really one of the safest things that can be done. But of course, you obviously got to learn how to read between the lines. If stuff don't sound right, don't feel right, you could just
Yeah,
walk away. You know what I mean?
yeah, definitely. How do you feel like just being in the medical field? How do you feel about like some of the holistic healings? Like, being out here, I kind of dabble in some of that world of like getting like a Reiki
Mm-hmm.
healing and stuff like that. But how do you feel about some of that stuff?
I think it has a purpose. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, it's cultural, right? A lot of times people indulge in certain things from a holistic approach because it's either how they were raised, they've had an experience, and it's actually been beneficial. So, my job oftentimes is not to disavow people when they walk in and say, oh, I'm using this, and be like, oh, don't do that. It's my job is to understand where is the approach that they're coming from, and then the science behind the approach. So, holistic medicine actually has some science behind it. A lot of people don't realize it. It's just the gap that happens is that how much science actually goes into it. And what do I mean by that? If you're actually studying and looking at something and it can be proven consistently, that's when you talk about science. A lot of times people will have a good outcome and it happens because of a bunch of other stuff, and they often think that it had to be from the one thing that they're banking on, and that can actually not be a great thing. So you have to be very careful with that because a lot of people won't actually understand that that one supplement they took wasn't the reason they got better. It's because of a bunch of other stuff. So you want to have that science into it, and if the science is there, I think you're fine. And even if it's not the most common sold in the Walmarts and all of this, I'm not against it. I just want to understand it. And if I understand it better, I think we can do a better job of taking care of folks where they're at, as opposed to feeling like they always got to take this pharmaceutical type medication.
Man, I feel that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and speaking of pharmaceutical medications,
Mhm.
because I know that I saw that you were doing some work with like HIV and AIDS, and being that like a good amount of my audience is of the LGBT community,
Yeah.
um, what are your thoughts on PrEP, Truvada? And for the listeners, it's what would you call it, like a HIV prevention?
Yeah, so PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis. There's also something called post-exposure prophylaxis, which I definitely want to talk to you about because it's a thing that a lot of people don't even know exists. And as much as people know about PrEP, a lot of people don't know about PEP. So PrEP is what you take prior to having an exposure to prevent you from getting HIV. I'm a huge, huge advocate of PrEP. Shout out to the LGBTQ community, some of my best and most entertaining patients. And more importantly, it's a lot of my patients. It's funny because I'll have conversations with people and they don't realize I take care of a lot of patients in that community. And it's almost like, well, who do you think I take care of, right? I think a lot of people think I take care of old ladies a lot of times. And
Yeah.
I'm like, no, my spectrum is literally from adolescents all the way up to grandparents, right? Great grandparents. So I actually take care of whole families. So I've seen all kind of dynamics, which is another story. But the LGBTQ community that I take care of, a lot of them are on PrEP. And if they are HIV positive, they're on their medicines that often have PrEP within it. Because PrEP is actually two HIV medications that they found if you take it prior to exposure, it will basically prevent you from getting the virus in your system, allowing that virus to make copies, and then it stays in your system and we can't get rid of it. So basically, the virus still comes into the system, but it in essence kills the virus so it doesn't make copies of itself. Now, that's very similar to something called a vaccine, which is funny because people will actually do certain things to prevent stuff, but don't take vaccines, which is fun. But, anyways, the PrEP medication, which is going to hopefully expand to where it's not just the one medicine. It's actually Truvada is one version, the new version of Truvada is called Descovy. So that's the other version. So those two are in play. The idea of PrEP is really helpful because it helps to keep people from getting HIV with condom use, right? A lot of people don't often think about condom use, but it's a huge thing. You know, as much as I want to tell people take PrEP and that's it, you got to use condoms with it. So I highly advocate for people who need it to be on it, and then people who don't realize they need it, I actually put them on it. I'll tell you a quick story, and this is how bad it is for a lot of people. I had a young lady, 24 years old. This was this week. And you can ask some of the people I talked to on the phone. The lady told me, I don't want to take PrEP because it gives people HIV. And we asked her, how do you come up with that? She said, I saw it on YouTube.
Oh
Now,
wow.
who on
Wow.
YouTube, where on YouTube, have no idea. And then her words after that were, and I quote, I don't need to take it because I'm not high risk. Now, the word high risk is words we use to define who probably is going to be at risk for getting HIV. The
Right.
category is broad, but if you have a history of STDs of any kind, you are high risk. This young lady had multiple, but in her mind, that doesn't count. So the idea of miseducation is out there, and people often get confused about PrEP and how it works and all that. But hear me when I say it's very effective. There are very minimal side effects. The biggest barrier to PrEP is the cost. If the cost was not so expensive, it would probably be a lot more, what's the word, available, I guess, if you would say. And really quickly, PEP, post exposure prophylaxis, is if you feel you have been exposed to someone who has HIV, no matter if you know it or not, you going to a place that offers PEP within 72 hours, 3 days. If you say I had an exposure and you go in 3 days to get post exposure and you start on treatment, it could potentially eliminate you going from an exposure to HIV to being HIV positive. So
Wow.
there's actually a window by which, if you're exposed and you start the medicine for post exposure, you can basically go from, hey, I've been exposed, but I was able to eradicate it before I ended up being positive and can't get rid of it. So
Wow.
a lot of people don't know that. And it's funny because I actually work right now, at least for another couple of weeks, as a teacher of physicians. I am a family med faculty, so I teach residents who are in training. You know how many people I have explained that post exposure prophylaxis is a thing, and they're like, wait, what? And they're medically trained. So
Yeah, no,
you can
I never heard of it.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. So, and there's nothing wrong with it, for lack of a better term. The layperson hasn't heard of it because most lay people don't know these, you're not supposed to know everything medical, right? But I
Right.
have doctors who will have people come in and say, oh, well, so and so had a sexual encounter and the condom broke. So we're going to check them for pregnancy. And I'm like, did you check them for HIV? Oh, no, we didn't do that. Okay, well, what about post exposure prophylaxis? Oh, what's that again? And I'm like, wait, what? Like, are you serious right now? So in this last 2 to 3 months, we've put several young ladies on post exposure because they had a fear of being pregnant. And because of that, we ended up saying, you know what? This is something we should potentially consider as well. And by doing it, we hopefully avoid someone being HIV positive. Now, do I say that because everybody needs to go run and get post exposure prophylaxis? No. Does everybody need to go and be reckless and say, well, as long as I get in within 72 hours, I'll be good? No. The goal is to say, if I need it, it's there. And to be smart and use condoms and have safe sex and all of that good stuff. And if you're extra prepared by using pre-exposure, we don't have to worry about the whole 72-hour window because you're preparing yourself prior to those exposures.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Man, I've always wondered because I do take PrEP, but
Mm-hmm.
I always wondered why don't they push PrEP to heterosexual people?
Mm-hmm. I think it just depends on where you're at, to be honest with you.
Okay.
If it's down in the South, okay, so again, I'm in Louisiana, so
Yeah.
Lord, that's all. Trying to explain this to some of the people down here of how it works is like pulling teeth, right? There's so many
Okay.
misconceptions behind it. But if you're in places like Cali, in DC, Baltimore, like these places where people get it, a lot of those things have actually grown to where there are campaigns. Like Chicago, I think, was the first city across the country that had a citywide campaign to start getting PrEP into the hands of people who need it.
Wow.
And it was literally like billboards, bus stops, slattered on the side of buses, like you name it. They had commercials, they had hubs, they had phone numbers, and they did a huge campaign because they knew HIV was a thing. They're trying to keep people from becoming positive because that's a whole nother animal in itself. And
Yeah.
that was more of an effort for public health, preventative measures to stop people from getting sick. But down here in an area like Baton Rouge or New Orleans, where we are in the top 5 in the country, and I'm gonna say that again, the country, not the state, because people
Yeah.
would think I'm confused. New Orleans and Baton Rouge, whose population is minimal compared to a Los Angeles, compared to a Seattle, they are in the top 5 of HIV and syphilis and all this, but we don't have those campaigns. Why? Because the people who are often in the seats that need to make decisions about things like this are either like, I don't want to have that conversation because we're in Louisiana. In Louisiana, that's not acceptable, right? But it's here. What you want to do about it? You're going to tell me we're just going to wish it away? It ain't working yet. So the idea is PrEP is actually a big thing with people who know how to use it, who know when it's appropriate, who know where to use it, how to get it. Like I talk about it all the time. I'm sure my residents hate every time I talk about PrEP. Like they get irritated when I'm like, did you talk about PrEP? And they're like, oh, I forgot. I'm like, look, you need to either talk about it or I'm gonna talk about it. Because the
Yeah.
goal is to get people to not get sick. If you are in primary care and you're trained the right way, your goal is to keep people healthy. It's not to give them care when they are sick. And that's the way the medical system is built in this country. It's built on people getting sick and then we treat them. We then give them a big ass bill and then we tell them, well, what do you want us to do? You were sick. How about we put more money into prevention, into the
Yeah.
people who actually are on the front lines that prevent people from getting sick? And maybe you'll change the way things actually happen, right? Maybe you'll start to see a lot of the numbers decline as opposed to thinking they're maintaining or going up.
Yeah, man. It's a trip. Like I'm even thinking like, when I was living in the South or growing up in the South, it just wasn't something that was really talked about
Right.
at all.
Oh man, I have patients whose family members is still that old stuff you see on TV and movies. You're like, oh man, I lived in such and such, and my family doesn't talk to me. No, this is real. I have patients who flat out are like, I can't go home because my family doesn't want me in the house, and I'm like, why? And they'll tell me the stuff, and I'm just like, man, it's heartbreaking. And
Yeah.
I'm doing my very best to kind of, be an advocate, but there's only so much I can do. But it's really sad because imagine the person you come to, your clinician is the same type as your family who doesn't have any sense about this lifestyle. You go to
Yeah.
your physician and say, hey, Dr. Smith, I want PrEP. And they're like, what's PrEP? Like,
Yeah.
you know more about PrEP than the doctor. Like, are you serious? Right? So it's one of those things where I constantly am advocating all the time for my patients to learn. And I love to educate people. I'm a teacher, unofficially and officially, for a number of reasons. And talking to people and explaining to people so they learn, I tell them, hey, if I do that and I teach you the right way, if I'm not around, you're going to know your stuff well enough to when you go to the next person, you know it ain't full of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's always why I'm like, if we do a good job of educating patients, meeting them where they are, and teaching them what they should or shouldn't do, the rest of the stuff will work itself out, in my opinion. But obviously, everybody don't think like that.
Yeah. Now, even as I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, man, what advice would you give to like, I mean, we like not even doctors that are already doctors now, but people that are trying to become doctors, like what advice could you give them to like, create a safe space for their clients, to their patients, to be able to just express that? Because I was thinking about that, like with my heterosexual doctors, I didn't feel comfortable even like asking for an HIV test or
Mhm.
an STD test, just for the simple fact not wanting to be judged.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, this is a tough thing to tell a patient that they should feel comfortable on every level with their physician because it's sometimes just not realistic. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you the thing I tell a lot of people: if you with your physician and you don't feel like you really getting the answers or the care you need to find a new physician. And a lot of people don't like that, especially physicians. I'm in a meeting with a bunch of them, and they like, well, we shouldn't badmouth each other. I'm like, I don't know And of course, I said it to myself, but I was like, I don't know who, because if y'all suck, I'm gonna say y'all suck. I'm sorry. Our people been getting messed over too long for me to be nice and say, well, he's a good doctor when he sucks, right? So
Yeah.
I'm usually the person that's like, you better stop going over there because he obviously ain't doing a good job. And there's a doc out here who basically is supposedly a pain management doctor. And anytime we send Medicaid patients to him because he takes Medicaid, he treats them like shit. And
Yeah.
they constantly keep sending people to him. I'm like, don't send nobody up there. You want them to drive to go to a place where the doctor treats them like shit? Like, it makes no sense. So my biggest thing is to say to patients, first and foremost, you got to find somebody you connect with. It's
Yeah.
hard to do. And a lot of people don't like, for lack of a better term, finding new doctors. But I honestly put it in layman's terms of, if you had a barber and your barber
That's
fucked
true.
it
That's
all
true.
the way up, how many times would you go back and get another cut? If you
Yeah.
had a mechanic who messed your ride up, your brakes gone, your engine shot, how many times are you going back? But with doctors, we keep going back. We
Now you're
keep
right
getting
about that. Yeah.
yeah, you know, misdiagnosed, mistreated, spoken to in a weird way, not getting the care we believe we deserve, and all of a sudden we just keep showing up. So I think when you find that connection, you will know, because you're going to feel like you can talk about anything. You can have an honest conversation. You're not going to get judged. And more importantly, you probably will have more confidence when you leave the doctor than you did before you went in. And I
Yeah.
think that's what you're looking for. And you'll know when you have it. And if you aren't sure, I always say, ask the people who have good doctors what they get. Not just ask for the name, but ask them, why do you like this doctor? And if the answer is, he on my insurance card, stop. Right? Like, throw the insurance card away. Like, that's what I'm gonna say, right? Because I've heard all kind of answers. Like, why do you go to this doctor? Well, he's by my house.
Yeah.
Or my dad said I go here because, you know, that's who he sees. And it has nothing to do with the doctor. It has to do with everything but the doctor. So if you say, why do you come to see Dr. Jasper? I want you to say, he listens. He's good. He explains it well. He's knowledgeable, right? Now, you may say he talks too much, because I do run my mouth a lot, right? Like, that's part of the reason why I'm going to direct primary care, because we got long appointments. I talk all the time. I talk way too much. So I want you to be able to say that, right? I want you to be able
Yeah.
to say, I know my doctor. He's really cool. He's understanding. He's funny. Like, something that explains a characteristic that makes you proud to refer me, right? It ain't
I feel
because
that.
his coffee is really good in the waiting room. Like, that foolishness that I hear people say. So as
Yeah.
long as
No, I feel
you have
you.
that vibe, you're gonna want to go to the doctor. You're gonna want to go to see your doctor. It shouldn't be, oh, I gotta go to the doctor today, right? It should be, I'm ready, right? I'm happy
Yeah.
because my doctor's cool and I know I'm gonna be healthier when I leave, right?
Yeah.
She will take care of me better than I think I can take care of myself. And that vibe, you know, it doesn't always have to be what you have in your mind is the right type of doctor. Some doctors are going to be better than you have the misconception it is, right? A lot of times people always think it has to be a male. Not true at all. Some of the best doctors I know are female, 10 times better than males, right?
Yeah.
And if your doctor, last point, I'm sorry, again, I can go on for days. The last point is, if your doctor is so smart that they never are wrong, again, get another doctor. If your doctor is not humble enough to say, I made a mistake, I messed up, I forgot to call you back, I was supposed to send your script, but I forgot. If they can't do that, you got a bad doc. And I'm going to be honest with you, because people don't realize we're human too.
Yeah.
Dr. Jasper makes mistakes all the time. And as I make mistakes, I try to constantly tell patients, I'm human. I don't know everything. And I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to work my ass off to make sure I get you the best care you can. And I feel like if you have that humility and that drive and that connection, everything else is going to work itself out. Right? Because I have patients who call me and say, before they get anything else done, I need to talk to my doctor first, right? You know, that kind of feeling you have when a person says, I can't make no decision until I talk to my doctor. That tells you you're doing something right. And that's how I know my mindset and what I'm doing makes a difference. It's not just because I got a huge paycheck because I see the most patients. You know,
Yeah.
that bullshit that the insurance companies tell us to do. because they want us to see 30 people in a day because that means you're productive. No, that just means you see a lot of goddamn people. That's what that means.
That's real, man. I had a couple of more questions for
Yeah.
you. You were in undergrad or in med school during Katrina?
I was a senior the year Katrina happened.
Oh
I was on
wow.
campus for 1 week, okay, and then came back and had to leave. So yeah, senior, '05.
Wow. What advice would you give to somebody in school right now during the pandemic?
Yeah, honestly, it's hard because it's almost one of those things like you don't know what's coming next. And the way the pandemic is going, it's up and it's down and it's up and it's down. But the one thing I'd say consistently is again, find the purpose of what you're doing. If you're going to this school because someone told you to, you're probably not going to get a lot out of it right now other than a bill. So
Yeah.
my goal is to make sure I tell the students I talk to all the time, if you're doing it for the right reason, you're doing it because you want to, you're doing it because the reward is going to be there, you're going to push through. It may not come in the form that you want it, but it is going to happen when it's supposed to. So I constantly want people to remember to persevere, to continue to push hard, and remember that at the end of the day, you're doing it for the right reason. And even if it doesn't make sense, it'll work itself out.
Yeah.
Right. Because again, don't ask me what I was thinking my senior year when I was literally back home trying to figure out what I was going to do for a semester because our school was underwater, right? So I was
Yeah.
just like making it up as I go. But it worked out because I knew what I wanted to do and I knew what my purpose was. And I ended up being, I did very well to the point where it worked out. So don't have to have it all written out for you. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. That's what's up.
Mhm.
What is the key to getting through med school?
Uh, uh, whew,
Like
that's a that's,
how did you get through it?
that's a beautiful question and a good question. And I'm gonna tell you, if you ask 30 people that, you can get 30 different answers. You might have some commonalities, but it's gonna be different. How I got through was again remembering why I did it. There are plenty of times where I wanted to give up, plenty of times where I should have probably given up. The story that everybody knows that knows me well or who has kind of followed my trajectory, if you will, career, whatever you want to call it, I almost flunked out of medical school. I literally was on probation in medical school because we have to pass a test called Step One. And Step One is the test by which it tells you what you're going to be when you get out of medical school because it tells you how smart you are, if you will. I failed that test 3 times.
Wow.
Three. Now, also, I'm gonna put you on game how funny this is. I'm laughing about it now. In the past, I'd be in tears. But literally, step one cost about $500 to sit for the exam. And it's about an 8-hour test. So I literally had to pay about $2,000 just to get through this exam because I had to sit for it 4 times. And on top of those 4 times, 8 hours per exam. So think about 4 days of my life was spent on that one test, not to count all of the studying that goes into it, which is a whole nother story. So if I would have to tell people who have either went through that or are going to go through that, if I can make it, anybody can make it. And people are like, oh no, you real smart and all that. Maybe so. But the other part that got me through is I remembered why I did it. If I failed the first, second, and third time and I didn't quit, the only way they were going to stop me is to drag me out that goddamn school. Right? They was going to have to say, look, security is here. You either going to leave or we going to throw you out. Because I wasn't leaving. I was
Yeah.
not going to leave unless they made me. And I was like, look, I'm going to figure it out or you're going to put me out. And if you have that mindset, it's going to work. It's just, again, you got to have that drive. And a lot of people get discouraged. And I understand it. That's why we did CMMP. We're basically a huge family of a lot of minority docs and physical therapists and dentists, like all the healthcare people you can imagine. We want people to come join this big group just so we can learn, get the next generation the confidence, the resources, the things they need to not run into those walls and give up. Because I had a mentor, and it wasn't really a true mentor, but the guy who was in my life at the time was a doc, and he told me what I was doing that made me fail. And that one little piece of game that he actually gave to me made me pass that one time. It just took one person to give me the right information. Mind you, I had a bunch of people around me who knew I failed 3 times and didn't give me the right information. So having that mentor in your life will get you there. And that advice is you got to find those mentors. You got to have that drive. You got to stay committed. You're going to have obstacles, and some of us are going to have more than others. But if you are determined and you put the work in, it will work out. I have a bunch of students who I know and have gotten into medical school based off of me trying to help and point them in the right direction. All they needed was the assistance. And I will also put a plug in for people who aren't medical. You don't have to be a medical person or personnel to be a part of CMNP. We want everybody, because you, the teacher, may be able to help us find the resources for a scholarship to get this student through school.
Yeah.
You ain't got to be a medical person to look up a scholarship, but we need that because some of us, Mike, tell me if I'm lying, need financial assistance to get through school. Because
Absolutely.
last I checked, I ain't got a rich uncle. Okay,
Yeah,
my
definitely.
people ain't left me a couple million. So if I would have had scholarship assistance, it would have made a huge difference. Because
Absolutely.
yeah, because people don't also know this, or some people do. I actually DJ'd in medical school to pay some of my bills. I bought
Wow.
turntables and learned or taught myself how to be a makeshift DJ to pay some bills in medical school, because when I was on probation, my financial assistance stopped. So I had to make ends meet, study, and spin records. Okay, so
Wow.
people don't realize that it's, oh, Dr. Jasper, you're so successful. Man, look, if you know what I've been through, you know my drive is insane, because you know how much stuff could have stopped me, and I'm still here. Again, they're gonna have to drag me out this mud, right? Like, it's insane the amount of stuff that people think and get that misconception. So altogether, that long drawn out story is me saying, if you really want it and you have the mindset, you're going to find a way. And a lot of us want you to find that way, and we're going to help you. You just need to get off your ass and be humble enough to ask for help, because a lot of us don't want to do that either, right? We going to do it ourselves, right? That don't work, okay? It don't work all the time. You might be successful the majority of the time, but eventually you're going to need help. So how about you get the help early and stop waiting until you get into, oh, I'm in dire straits, my back's against the wall, I ain't got no money. Like, don't wait until that. Come find us early. And that's where we're at with CMMP. And even with Bija Clinic, like I said, those two things, they're synonymous in different arenas, but they're built on the same thing. I want to help you before you get into trouble. So
Yeah.
when you need something, you already know where to go. Not, oh, I wish I would have did this 3 years ago. I wish I would have did it before I got sick. Do it now and come see us. And you definitely come see me. I'm definitely, as you can tell, I can talk all the day.
That's what's up, man. And I got one more question for you.
Yeah, yeah,
One piece of advice or one life lesson that you could share with the listeners.
yeah. So I'd say be you. Okay, and that sounds real simple, but it's one of the things that's tough for a lot of people. One, because they're finding themselves, but two, they're afraid of what people are going to say when they become themselves, right? They're worried about what people are going to think. I have never been that person. And a lot of times people see me and they think I'm really buttoned up, right? They really feel like, well, Dr. Jasper's always so put together. Like, I'm probably the exact opposite. But the difference is I'm not doing that with everybody. But if you get around me and you get me into a safe space, I'm going to be me. So I try to encourage people to practice medicine how you want, make music how you want, cook how you want, do the things that you want to do to express who you are. And as you do that, when you're authentic stuff will find you, right? Your purpose will find you. The people who are supposed to be around you will find you. So be you, and remember that you're here for a reason, and you're going to change somebody's life if you are authentic, hardworking, and do the things you're supposed to do.
Man, Byron, thank you so much for sharing that. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, man, my
Um,
pleasure.
where can the people find you?
Yeah, so plenty of places, but the main places. So on Instagram, which a lot of people will find us, and I say us because it's usually a huge, huge village of people with me. Uh, our Instagram handle for CMMP is at CMMP CMMPmed, so at CMMPmed. We have a website, www.cmmppmed.org, and that's the Comprehensive Medical Mentoring Program, the nonprofit. The clinic, we are at Byja Clinic, BYJA Clinic on Instagram, and website is www.byja.org. And my own personal Instagram is at Dr. Jasper.
That's what's up, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, man. Yeah, anytime. And as I said, I do talk a lot, so I apologize to
No,
anybody.
you good.
But if you got anything you need from a health standpoint, anything I can help with, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I'm always wanting to educate folks on how to do health and just simple stuff, whether it's blood pressure, men's health, whatever. Man, hit me up. You always got a friend in me, and you always got an advocate in me, even if it's, LGBT, whatever. If I can help, let me know.
That's what's up, man. Yeah, we definitely gonna do some things for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
absolutely. But thank you. And again, keep doing you. Side note. This man is a grinder. Again, I told him I may not actually be on social media doing the most because that's just not my personality. I'm not a big social media on there all the time, but I do pay attention. I actually listen to these clips, and some of these clips, I'd be like, oh, snap. They just said a word. I'm ready. Like I be watching, I be listening, I may not get all of it, but I'm definitely with it, man. I'm watching. So keep doing you, keep grinding. You're making a difference, whether you know it or not. And even if you don't have as many people who come, they're going to follow eventually. So keep doing you, man. I'm a huge supporter. I'm a huge fan.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, brother.
And thank y'all for listening. This is Mike Brown, and this is The Art of Letting Go. Peace.